All right. We should be live right now. Should be at least. um, just make sure very quickly. Yeah, it says it's live. Are you guys getting a feed or go? Get some music up and running. All right. So you guys are getting a feed, albeit slightly delayed. Or maybe you just took way too long to reply, Avedon. One of those two things. We'll never know. We're live? All right. What's good, gamers? Aquila here, of course. Welcome back to each and every one of you to another episode. This is episode 3 of Barrens Chat. In Barrens Chat, of course, we go live, we hang out, we talk about World of Warcraft, lore, gameplay, really whatever the hell I care about. And whatever Blizzard does that's weird and wonky and blows us a little bit away, right? So we're going to wait for people to kind of filter in, sort of arrive. And then we'll hopefully kick it off. And, hopefully you guys will enjoy it because it is a pretty jam-packed episode. There's a lot that needs to be discussed today. Holy, how you doing? Avedon, how you doing, bro? Andrew, how you doing? I hope that you are all doing well. It's a pretty jam-packed episode. There's a lot that happened, and there's a lot that continues to happen. It seems like Blizzard have gone from, just 2 years ago, basically never speaking to the player base about anything, to now they can't stop speaking, and they can't stop sharing stuff, and they can't stop basically giving us an inside look into, or an inside track even, into mindsets and philosophies and how they want to approach things. And I think, Plunderstorm was a big one. We spoke about that when it launched first. And obviously we now have the Mob remix that is also coming. And as you can imagine, there's a gameplay reason for why Mob remix is actually pretty good. And we should be very excited for it. But there's also a lore reason why I think Mists of Pandaria may have been chosen. People say smoking gives you cancer. They haven't tried League. Yeah, the difference is League cancer will not kill you. It will make you stronger if you can survive it. And also, it depends on what league you're in. I find it gets more toxic as you go up in ranks, up until a point, and then it starts to sort of get a little less toxic as you get over it. But yeah, there are some really shitty moments, I guess you could say, in League of Legends. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I digress. We're not here to talk about League of Legends. As fun as that may be, Brittle J, how you doing? Sounds fun, and here's something else to do, but yet again, I gotta park the character I'm most interested in playing. So, Brittle, I will actually talk about this very, very quickly, because it is something that a lot of people are saying. I want to play my main, or I want to play my character, right? Whoever that may be. And I can't play it with all of these versions. So Plunderstorm, I couldn't take my character into Plunderstorm. Sucks. And now, we have another feature or another game mode that your main character can't be in. I think it's important to understand the concepts that we're dealing with, but also the experimentation that is going on from Blizzard's side. I can very easily see something like Plunderstorm becoming an actual feature in World of Warcraft that eventually you can take your character into it and go and enjoy PvP with it. The same with this, with the remix stuff. I can see it working. I think the reason why Blizzard doesn't want to screw around with max level characters or allow max level characters in there is it gives them a little bit more freedom to, shall we say, experiment, because it's an alt, right? And most people don't even know if their alt is fun because they've never leveled this alt. So they're going to be a lot more forgiving, and this gives Blizzard the perfect opportunity to gather data on how players are actually interacting with the different features and the different sort of systems within the remix, And then if it is something that eventually launches, because this is what I would like to see. If we're talking about wish lists for what I would like to see, I would like to see an always on version of Remix. Something that you go into it, no matter where you are with your main character, the game remembers the version that you are in and where you were. So if you go into, because I think in this one you're going to be speaking to Atanas and the Infinite Dragonflight, and they're actually the ones that are going to be sending you back in time to this alternative version of Mist of Pandaria. It would be so cool if you could speak to Atanas and the Infinite Dragonflight, get sent to Mist of Pandaria instantly. You literally pick it up where you left it, and if you want to leave, you just leave, come back to the main game, and just keep playing. And it's a seamless transition between the two versions where you can do absolutely bonkers shit in Remix, but then also just go back and play some retail. I can see a world where that can exist, and it's not as if it's completely out of the blue and no one's ever tried it. Final Fantasy have 2 zones that operate pretty much exactly like this, which is entire massive zones. One of them I think have multiple zones in it where you're killing world bosses and doing dungeons and killing absolute massive stuff, and it's there, right? Anyone can play it at any time. I do think this, however, is sort of Blizzard's opportunity to test a lot of these features and make sure if the player base even cares about it. Like Plunderstorm, for example, it's pretty out there, and the WoW player base, as they have proven themselves to be, do not really like way out there stuff. The second you introduce something that they don't like, they get very angry. Because apparently everything you launch must be for everyone, or else it isn't good. But I think this is a good start. All I'm hoping for right now is that Blizzard remove the FOMO elements. Don't let this shit go away. Just introduce it once you're done tasting it and you're happy with it. Introduce it and keep it there. Let people... someone said in one of the videos, they commented and they said they can't keep it there because it will basically just replace leveling. Everyone will just use this to level. And my first response to this was, so what? The leveling experience in World of Warcraft is already pretty shit. Why not give people a fun way to level up? I don't understand the problem here. You're complaining because they're giving you an ice cream sundae instead of the usual dry-ass sponge cake that you always got. And you're saying, well, they can't always give us, the ice cream sundae because then people won't want to eat the dry sponge cake. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's exactly how it goes. I think everyone's happy with that. Let me just quickly see here. I get that, I really do, but still, I'm slightly salty about not playing my character that I've put so many hours into. I'll make a new alt for Mop Remix, but when it's done, I'm going to delete it. Holy shit, Brit J. You are really not happy about this. Probably testing a better way to level a new character, let's be honest here. The existing leveling experience is a bit naff. You can't even experience the full story of a single expansion before you're moved to the Dragon Isles. It's same in Diablo. People only level alts in the seasonal system because why would you do it in the permanent realm? That's always the same and no boosts. Matthew, how you doing, brother? Abaddon. Yeah, I think fundamentally, when you have a game as old as World of Warcraft, you run into some pretty serious issues. And one of those issues is fundamentally, how do you keep the game current and also try to get all of the players, regardless of where on the timeline they start, to have the same experience when you have such a massive game with so many hundreds, if not thousands of hours worth of content. Now, I know for myself, if you asked me, and it was just me that's going to play the game, I would say you make all of the quests mandatory from Classic WoW right up to current day. There's a storyline, you have to play through all of it, because there's a joint story or a shared story that everyone needs to be able to share. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter, right? And right now in World of Warcraft, that is not the case. Most people that are max level don't know anything about TBC's storyline or about Wrath of the Lich King storyline, or even about Cataclysm storyline, or Mist of Pandaria storyline for that matter. They don't know, right? They have never played those storylines, so they don't know what's going on there. So you sort of have these different groups that have different shared experiences about the world, and you know, it's difficult for those players to get along because you have so many different shared versions of the world. The problem with that is, of course, not many people play the way that I play. Not many people care about the story the way that I do. And so if we went my way, I feel like a lot of players would just flat out quit the game because they wouldn't want to be part of that. That's not something that they want to play. That's not a way that they want to play the game. So I kind of get why Blizzard does it the way that they do. I do like the idea of having an X-Pack to level all and learning the whole story for that X-Pack and not just bits. I've played since vanilla, so I've done them all. Leveling alts, I never follow the whole story. I can't imagine being brand new and having to just jump around, only learning bits. The problem that I have with jumping around and only learning bits and pieces of the lore is culture is about shared stories, right? The way you build a culture is about the shared stories of your history. And everyone needs to be able to agree on what those shared stories are. Otherwise, you don't really have a culture. You just have a group of people together that sort of believe very different things. So in World of Warcraft, in almost all games, for there to be a culture within that game, and that's usually what you try to do, because that will give your game a lot more longevity. When people feel like they're part of the group, they don't want to leave the group because that's their group. Why would they leave their group? You know, so it's kind of important to try and keep them there, to build that culture, that community, so that everyone feels part of that community in a way. The problem with World of Warcraft right now is that, and I realize we're getting like super psychological here, but the problem in World of Warcraft right now is that most of the player base, I would argue, have, like, someone started maybe in Cataclysm, another person started in Mist of Pandaria, another person started in Legion, maybe someone accidentally started in World of Draenor. What a terrible experience for your first expansion. But never mind that. Maybe some people started in BFA. So what happens is you have all of these different groups that have very different stories about the history of the game. Because the player that started in Mist of Pandaria, unless this is a player that actually went back and leveled through each of the old expansions, quite literally don't know anything about the previous expansions, nor do they care. And so these two players don't share a history. And now you have even more players, and before you know it, you have a community that isn't really a community. And in many ways, I feel like this is the kind of reaction you would expect from a community that isn't really a community. When Plunderstorm was announced, you had people literally losing their shit, throwing tantrums online, because how dare you make a feature that is PvP only? How dare you do that? But features like that have existed in World of Warcraft before. You know, it's not new. PvPers are an actual active part of the community, and they don't get a lot of content to begin with. So this was a nice thing to give them at least something to play, right? And it was brand new. It was really big. It was something to look forward to. Now you have the same thing happen with this. I saw the comments on my reaction to this. Players are angry. Again, you know, players are angry. And it's like, well, what do you want from Blizzard? You know, what do you want from Blizzard? How are they? What would make you happy from Blizzard's side? Because Blizzard is sort of caught between a rock and a very hard place. Either they do nothing and they just keep reiterating the same shit that they've done for the last 20 years, and the game slowly dies, right? Because people will eventually move on to other games if all you're getting is the same stuff over and over and over again. Or you try, right? You do something new, you fail. You try something else, you fail. Maybe you succeed. Maybe you half succeed, so you don't fully succeed, but there's enough there that you can sort of start pushing forward and maybe move that into something that's really cool and you know, really exciting. The problem is that when I ask players to get excited about this, they're like, no, I don't want this. I don't fucking give a shit. Blizzard is betraying me. And it's like, what are you talking about? Blizzard is a game company making games. For the first time ever, Blizzard is looking at the World of Warcraft IP and going, hey, you know what? Turns out there's a lot of shit that we can do with this IP, right? Turns out there's shit tons of content in our history that could actually be utilized to do something with. Why don't we try, right? And see how it goes. And maybe it fails, but maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, that's good. We should be excited about this stuff. Andres, how you doing? Anonymous, how you doing? Ortungu, how you doing? Miracos, how you doing, bro? I haven't tried Plunderstorm even once, but I never thought of it as a bad thing. You're one of the few. But then again, I also have to say, it's very deceptive, I think. It's oftentimes, as content creators, you sort of get into your own head and you start thinking, well, everyone must have the exact same experience as I do, right? I live on the forums, I live on Reddit, and I live on Twitter. I hate all of them, but I have to do it because it's my job. So, you know, I do it. But then you have to realize that the overwhelming majority of players are not on Reddit, Twitter, or the forums. They're just playing the game, right? They don't give a fuck about any of this shit. None of this bothers them, right? They're just here having the best time of their lives, or maybe not, and then they quit, and then you wouldn't even know, because they're not going to let you know. They're not going to make a video. They're not going to leave a forum post. They're just going to leave and go play something else. The overwhelming majority of players aren't part of this. So when I say the majority of players freak out about this stuff, I am really just talking about the terminally online folk like myself. It's not the overwhelming majority of players that actually freak out about this stuff. I like MoP and thought it was a good expansion, but I think Blizzard picked it for a reason. What lore from MoP could they bring into? We are going to talk about that, Ortangu. Believe me, we're going to be talking about that. I don't mind them trying things out. I even joined in, did some Plunderstorm, but I found it not my thing to grind. I have no issues with others enjoying it. I enjoyed Plunderstorm for about a day, 2 days. I think we streamed it for about 2 days and then I moved on, which is longer than most patches. Or actually longer than what I play most games for. So that's not bad, actually. I still think it's a really good game mode. It's just not, you know, I'm all over the place when it comes to video games, so generally speaking, how long I play a game for is not a good indicator of whether or not I enjoyed the game. If I tell you I enjoyed it, that's what. You believe me, I don't enjoy it. And I enjoyed Plunderstorm. I thought it was really fun. I did play alone most of the time, though, so that's maybe why I don't really play WoW with anyone anymore, because all my friends left. They play other games now. I think they're on Helldivers or some shit, another game that I know I will not be playing for long, so I didn't even bother. Good take. Glad to see many game modes and events. Nick, I'm right there with you. I want Blizzard to explore more. I want to see another Plunderstorm-like event. I want to see Torghast made into an actual roguelite or roguelike experience. I want to see the farm from Mist of Pandaria in World of Warcraft's very own Farmville, or whatever the fuck. I don't give a shit, right? It can be anything. I want to see it. And I want to see Blizzard try it. Does that mean that I'm going to do all of those things? No, but I don't have to, right? As long as it exists and there's player base that enjoys it, that's all I care about. And that's what I want to see. But it's kind of one of the reasons I hate the FOMO part of it. Because the fact that it goes away creates this idea in the player's mind of this isn't for me, which means for the next 3-4 months, I'm not going to have anything to play. And I kind of feel like this is the thing that Blizzard is shooting themselves in the foot with. Because if Plunderstorm remained online just forever, right? It was now a new game mode and it is just a thing that exists. What would happen is you now have this new announcement that is all PvE, no PvP. The PvPers don't really give a shit, right? Because it's like, well, I have Plunderstorm and there's going to be new updates for Plunderstorm. So yeah, you guys can enjoy your Mist of Pandaria, beat the dummy bullshit. I want to be doing Plunderstorm. And the people that like and look forward to Mist of Pandaria, they're going to be doing that. right? And then maybe next patch, they decide to launch the Torghast Adventure, right? Or whatever you want to call it. And that's a thing that a lot of people can do and maybe enjoy. Max, thank you so much for the gift that's up, dude. Really appreciate you. Thank you. You're far too kind, sir. Can I get some hearts in chat? Glovey, how you doing, brother? The problem is that with it going away, because each of these features only really cater to a specific audience, the audience feels a little left out. The audience, unless you're including everyone, people are going to feel left out. So you are sort of just making things a little bit worse, right? Akko doesn't pay his mods or give us free memberships. Pay me, bitch. Valoria, how you doing? So yeah, I'm excited for it. But all right, that's not, that's not why you guys are here. Let's talk about the lore reasons for it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay, because I do think it is important. Mist of Pandaria. Why Mist of Pandaria? Can I get some guesses from chat? Why did Blizzard decide Mist remakes? Of all the expansions that they could have chosen, why Mists? Zariel, how you doing, bro? Max, how you doing? It's next after Kata. All right. Gameplay. Let's talk gameplay first. Gameplay-wise, there's basically two expansions that Blizzard could choose from. Just two. Legion and Mist of Pandaria. Why? Because of all the expansions in the history of World of Warcraft, those are the two that's basically lauded by most, if not all, as the two greatest expansions in World of Warcraft's history. Sure, if you talk to some of us, like the old guard, we will go back to things like Wrath of the Lich King, we'll go back to things like TBC, but that's not what the majority would say. Right? The majority would say, for modern WoW, it was Mist of Pandaria or Legion. From a player-based perspective, I would argue, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would argue that there are far more people that have played Legion than there are people that have played MoB. If we were to scale the whole of the player base and ask them, when did you start playing? I would argue that there's far more people that maybe picked up the game in Legion and then just kept playing as a result of that, than there would be people that say, I started playing in Mist of Pandaria. That makes Mist of Pandaria gameplay the best expansion to pick up. Because you're introducing a large chunk of the community to an expansion that they've never experienced, an expansion that is lauded by most, even myself, as one of the best expansions ever made, at least from a beauty perspective. Mist of Pandaria was fucking breathtaking. Let's be honest. The first time I set foot in Mist of Pandaria, I was like, what? What? How does WoW look like this? It was phenomenal. It was such a magical experience, and it's fun to know that there's people that may experience it for the first time, or, at least experience some new version of it. And I'd be very interested to see if Blizzard maybe put some extra little tidbits and stuff in there, much like what they do with Season of Discovery. But of course, we'll have to wait and see. Now, let's talk about why you guys watch me. Lore. Why lore? Well, what do we have to look forward to? We have the World Soul Saga that is about to come up. Now, I don't think this is a secret. The World Soul Saga, at least the first two, very much focused on old gods. I mean, the War Within, we're chasing the Harbinger of the Void, Xal'atath. We're going into the planet, and there we find the Nerubians making deals with Xal'atath, getting 2 legs, and all manner of stuff going on there. Now, if we were to go back, and then Midnight, of course, suggests that even more void creatures, even more old god stuff that's going to be happening there. Now, if we go back in World of Warcraft's history, really, and we ask ourselves, which expansion deals with the void most? And specifically, I want to say, old lore of the Void. You basically have two options. You can go for the Void parts of Legion and BFA, or you go back to Mist of Pandaria. I would actually argue Mist of Pandaria even more so because of the Cluxy. Now, we had the Shaw and we had Yisaraj, all in Mist of Pandaria, and all really good. We had the whole Garrosh thing and the heart of Yisaraj, and that was also a lot of insight. But the Cluxy really is the one that stood out to me most, because the Cluxy, more so than anyone else, remembers a time with the old gods that predates the arrival of even the Titans. A lot of the other things and a lot of the other elements of the old gods in World of Warcraft are elements of people serving the old gods after the Titans had already locked them up, or, sort of more recently falling to the Whispers of the Void. For the Cluxy, if you go back and you do their storylines, they knew the old gods and they worshipped and served the old gods as mantids, because obviously Cluxy is just another word for priest in their language. But the mantids served the old ones, or the old gods, long before the Titans arrived. What's interesting about them serving the old gods is the fact that they don't really like the old gods. The old gods are considered to be very evil masters, very evil gods. Terrifying gods is one of the words that they use. Like, their gods were terrifying. Now, the Cluxy specifically worshipped Yisaraj. I'm pretty sure you could probably... The problem is we don't know a lot about their culture, even though there's an entire expansion about it. The Mantids as a whole is even worse. Now, why is this important? At least from a lore perspective for someone like myself, and I'm assuming for you guys as well. What did the Titans tell us about Azeroth before they arrived? Nothing existed. Everything was bad. The old gods were basically running amok, destroying everything, driving the elements mad, and the elemental lords were picking sides and fighting basically a never-ending war. That's the story, right? That's the story that we've all been told. And that's the story that most of the denizens of Azeroth at least believe when it comes to, of course, the old gods, at least, and the Titans and how the Titans operate. I would argue that there are exactly two races on Azeroth. There are more, but there's specifically two races on Azeroth that completely nullifies the Titans' storyline. The Cluxy and the Nerubians. The Cluxy isn't only a sentient beings that served the old gods. They had an entire society, an entire civilization. In fact, they didn't just have one civilization. They had multiple civilizations. There are different sects of the Mantids that served different gods and different old gods, and some of them got along, some of them didn't, some of them fell completely to the old god Whispers, others simply served the old gods, like the Cluxy. So, if you look at the Mantids, they weren't just, a kind of loosely defined group of insects. They had a massive civilization, and this was long before the Titans had even arrived. I see many of you talking about the Protodrakes and the Incarnates. The problem with the Protodrakes and the Incarnates is they didn't really have a civilization, right? Protodrakes, before the Titans really arrived, were, feral, for the most part. If you go back and you read, not Day of the Dragon, is it Rise of the Aspects? One of those. I can't remember the name of the book now. But if you go and you read the book, it actually shows you that of the aspects that we had, they were some of the more intelligent Protodrakes. Then there were Protodrakes that were Dawn of the Aspects. That's the one. Thank you. Yes, Dawn of the Aspects. Then you had some Protodrakes, a handful of them, that were kind of intelligent, but not super intelligent, right? They were kind of, like, they would be able to sort of put shapes with shapes if you really asked them nicely. And then you had most of the proto-drakes that were just dumb as rocks. The only thing they did was hunt, eat, sleep, hunt, eat, sleep, and mate. That's it. That's the proto-drakes. So to say that the proto-drakes predate the Titans' arrival, technically true, but it doesn't. There's no civilization there. They have no real structures or any real civilizational, organizational structure that we could point to and say something had existed before the Titans arrived. Whereas with the Cloxy, a lot existed. Actual civilizations existed. The Nerubians, for example, they burrowed under Azeroth into the earth and built entire kingdoms under Azeroth. And this happened long before the Titans arrived. The Lich King, of course, would then destroy the one in Northrend, but we now know that there's another one, at least where Xalatath is. There's probably even more of these Nerubian kingdoms hanging about. So going back to the Cloxy and learning more of the Cloxy, and maybe Blizzard even releasing a few more storylines for the Cloxy, I think is a phenomenal opportunity to help players catch up to what we'll be learning in the next expansion, because I do think The War Within and Midnight is going to reveal a lot about World of Warcraft and what happened in World of Warcraft. And I base that on the fact that the last expansion is called The Last Titan. Now, of course, you can look at The Last Titan, you can say, but Akalon, that could literally just mean the last Titan to be born, which would be Azeroth. I don't think that's the case. I think The Last Titan may actually refer to the last Titan, as in during Midnight and maybe during The Last Titan, we spend an awful amount of time, or an awful long amount of time, dispatching of the Titans, as they, prefer to be known. So learning about the origins from the Cloxy, who served the old gods long before anyone else really, I think is very, very important. And this is where I'll sort of throw in a little bit of a theory for you guys, because it's interesting. What did the Titans do? And I'm asking you guys in chat, what did the Titans do when they first arrived on Azeroth? Alpha Sigma, how you doing? Morning, how you doing? Gringo, how you doing? Anyone in chat want to venture a guess? What did the Titans do first thing after they arrived on Azeroth? First thing. They arrive on Azeroth and they do something. What do they do? Stretch your Titan legs. Like, true. After they stretched their legs. Like, after they went... that was long. Say hello. Possible. Also possible. They take out Yisaraj. We are told Amanthal reaches down, grabs Yisaraj by the balls, takes his penis foreskin, and rips him out of the planet. What does this do? It creates a giant gaping wound on Azeroth that then fills with her blood, and eventually it becomes the Well of Eternity. This is the story, right? And we believe it. Why wouldn't we believe it? It's the Titans that told us, and they never lie. Except, of course, for the fact that all of that is a lie, and Yisaraj wasn't killed by the Titans. Not in the way that they claim he was killed. I have a problem with a lot of stories now in World of Warcraft, and it all stems from a single cinematic that just doesn't make sense. So the Titans describe the old gods as mountains of flesh, and that they were burrowing deep within Azeroth with their tentacles, growing into her, and not because they were looking for funny time. No. They were burrowing into her because they wanted to corrupt her. And that's why when they ripped Yisaraj out of the planet, he was burrowed so deep that it nearly killed Azeroth. Except, of course, for the fact that N'Zoth proves that that is all bullshit. What happens directly after we free N'Zoth, or Azshara frees N'Zoth? He takes his shit, turns into a smoke monster, and leaves. According to the Titans, they can't do that. They're mountains of flesh, burrowed deep within Azeroth. So how exactly does N'Zoth turn into a cloud and then fuck off? This makes no sense. That should not happen. And then the next time we see N'Zoth, he is where? Inside Ny'alotha, a pocket dimension of Azeroth, but also not on Azeroth. Kind of tied to Azeroth, but not on Azeroth itself. So the whole story is bullshit. I don't believe any of it. I actually think the Well of Eternity was made on purpose. It wasn't an accident. They didn't accidentally rip Y'Shaarj out of the planet. They had a very specific reason for why the Well of Eternity had to be where it is. And I also wish to inform you guys that the Well of Eternity was not and has never been filled with the blood of Azeroth. Ever. There are exactly 2 instances of the blood of Azeroth that we are aware of in World of Warcraft. One is Azerite. Try not to have PTSD about that one. The other is Khajiit. How do we know Khajiit and Azerite must be related to each other? Because Galliwix remembers Khajiit reacting exactly the same as Azerite to touch. Exactly the same. The Khajiit had the exact same reaction. The second the sword got stuck into Azeroth, his cane that is made of Khajiit lit up, started glowing. And then he shows her the Azerite, and it's the exact same thing. The sword of Sargeras did one thing to Azeroth's blood, and that is it changed the color of it. And we're not entirely sure what the color change is supposed to signify, because Khajiit is a bit more greenish. Yeah, it's a greenish. It has like a greenish tint to it, and it has incredible properties. The Titan Keepers were using it in experiments. That's how the goblins got made in the first place. So that it had incredible properties, much like Azerite. But then why did that not happen with the Well of Eternity? If that is what the blood of Azeroth does when it comes out of her and flows, onto the surface, it immediately becomes rock. Why then does it stay metal or fluid? Why does it fill an entire gaping wound and just remain fluid? That makes 0 sense. On any level, there's no way that you can explain that in a way that explains both Azerite, Khajiit, and the waters. But you know what does explain the Well of Eternity? The Ruby Life Pools. The Ruby Life Pools actually explains the Well of Eternity perfectly. What did they do at the Ruby Life Pools? They took the waters from the top facility, infused that water with order magic, arcane, and then that water alone turned the proto-drakes in their eggs into dragons, infusing with the eggs. This is, by the way, why Viranoth was so angry. Now, what do we know about the Well of Eternity? The Titans channeled arcane into the Well of Eternity in order to stop the raging waters, because it was pretty angry. It was pretty lively, and then they channeled arcane into it to stabilize it, and that's how it became known as the Well of Eternity. What happened next to the Well of Eternity? Trolls became elves. Order. The Well of Eternity was made on purpose. It was made to bring order to the creation of Azeroth. But it was Azeroth's creation first. Azeroth made the beings. Now, as is true of life, it's chaotic. Life is weird. It brings forth things like the Faceless Ones, things like the Manted, things like the Nerubians. These are creatures that look awkward and weird, but they exist. It's kind of like our world. You know, there are some creatures in our world that you look at them and you go, how are you alive? For me, that's an octopus. I look at an octopus and I go, this kind of proves the theory that aliens must be real. There is no shot that this thing is native to Earth. It looks weird. That's life. The Titans, of course, don't like life. Not like that. They like life to be a lot more ordered, a lot more structured. And the Well of Eternity serves that purpose. It's the largest body of water on a continent that they made bigger, so all life would eventually find its way to the Well of Eternity. And you could imagine that the Well of Eternity probably connected to a boatload of rivers. So you had all of this water flowing through the world, basically poisoning the entire world with arcane, changing everything around it into a more ordered version that the Titans would approve of. And then, of course, we get the Gift of Flesh, we get the Curse of Flesh, whatever you want to call it. And that's how eventually you get mortal beings that no longer have to adhere to the Titans' ordered version of things. But I think all of that was built, and I'll finish with this. I said this during Pyromancer's stream as well. All of this, the Titans, where the old gods are placed, where their prisons are placed, where the Well of Eternity is, if you look at it, it is all meant to protect the Well of Eternity, because from the Well of Eternity that basically sat at the center of Kalimdor, Land of Eternal Stars, not Kalimdor as we know it today, at the center of it sits the Well of Eternity. The old gods sort of surround the Well of Eternity. Their role? To power the Umbral Veil, a giant veil that keeps something out. Now, Pyromancer suggested this could be the fifth old god. I actually don't think that's a bad idea. Or it could be something even worse than that. Something far more powerful. Something that the Titans simply did not want to contend with, because that thing would have killed them. I mean, there's some other arguments that we can make here, that the old gods may not actually be of the void. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that, if I'm quite honest with you. Maybe. I've not decided yet. To be fair, I've not decided yet how I feel about it. Because there are elements, the old gods speak about the Void Lords as masters. And they definitely serve the Void in some way, shape, or form. So if they are natural to Azeroth, the natural creations of Azeroth, then why did they start worshipping the Void? What's the reason? What's the purpose? And then also, we have old gods, or at least tangentially, we have evidence of old gods on other planets in the Great Beyond. So if the old gods are indeed creations of Azeroth, or children of Azeroth, then why are they throughout the Great Beyond? Why do they exist everywhere in the Great Beyond? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But that's, by the way, why I think Mist of Pandaria was chosen. It covers the old lore pretty well. It gives us a nice foundation to kind of, play into, which I think is perfect. Ny'alotha raid was a vision. It never really happened. Just like the video, Rathian chose to Anduin, but used the dagger to free his essence. Gringo, that's a lovely theory. The problem is that right now, at least, that is just pure headcanon. There's no evidence that Ny'alotha is just a vision. There's evidence that the first fight in Ny'alotha, the one against Rathian, is a vision, because it says it is, but nothing that Blizzard have done since Ny'alotha have given us any reason to believe that Ny'alotha didn't really happen. I was like you. I pointed out all of the reasons why it could be a vision. But then Shadowlands happened. And then after Shadowlands, Dragonflight happened. And Blizzard, all of their opportunities to come out and say, everything you've been seeing is actually just a vision of N'Zoth. Those moments are over, right? I have a feeling Agora Crater has something to do in the future. Ducky has to. Jordan, how you doing, bro? I think the Old Gods might be the negative aspects of the Titans that were separated from the Titans when they ordered themselves. Instead of incorporating their shadow, they denied it, hence Old Gods. The problem with that is the Old Gods predate the Titans by a long-ass time. Like a seriously long-ass time. The Old Gods were on Azeroth long before the Titans arrived, or even knew about Azeroth. And they themselves say this, right? So it's not like this is a Titan conspiracy. The Old Gods say that they were there first, or at least, first on Azeroth. No, I don't think the Old Gods are the Old Gods are first ones. I don't think that is what's happening here. Now, if it feels like another demi-realm, in this case between the realm of the Void Lords and Azeroth, it's possible. I want to say you're onto something, but that would mean I'd have to believe that the Blizzard monkeys can write a story like that. Fundamentally, I don't cater my speculations to what the Blizzard writers will or will not write. I cater my speculations on what would be a good story to write. Where should you take the story? I am hoping with the return of Chris Mason, I will once again be pleasantly surprised. When, I speculate about 5 or 6 different ways the story can go, Chris Mason comes out and he blows my dick off, right? I'm just like, holy shit, how is this so good? How is this guy so good? He's done it better than what I even imagined it could be. So, I don't care about... People always say this, you're putting more effort into it than the Blizzard writers. I don't think that's true. I think it is important to give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's see how it plays out for the next expansion. Okay, hear me out. This is off the wall, but it's interesting. Titans weren't Titans before they ordered themselves. I know Titans are Old Gods before they ordered themselves. They were different. Jordan, okay, but why would you argue that the Titans ordered themselves? Brit J, you are very much onto something now. So, the way I look at it, the Titans and the Eternal Ones are basically the same thing. And the Titans and the Eternal Ones is the result of a deal that was made between order, life, light, and death. Those 4 cosmological forces. Specifically, ruling out the Fel and the Void as basically too chaotic and too dangerous to even try to strike deals with. The only Titan that was picked up from the side of the Fel is Sire Denathrius. And I believe the only reason they got Sire Denathrius on their side was because it's pretty difficult to create without some level of disorder. So you do need someone to bring the disorder, the chaos, the entropy, so that you can actually create. But I do think you're onto something there. I don't know if we can make the link. The first ones, there's not a whole lot of evidence, but it's an interesting idea in terms of psychology and incorporating the shadow. Pyro made a point about the Titans using the Zeriths to order themselves, like how Zaval was trying to reorder everything. Jordan, so where I would sort of disagree, or where I would take a different path from Pyromancer on that one, is I don't believe the Titans ordered themselves. I believe they were all born within the Zerith realms, and I believe that they were all created by the first ones, but I don't believe that the first ones are in fact the first ones. I believe the first ones are the first ones only in name. So the true first ones, the masters or the originators of our universe, of the great beyond as we know it, I believe to be Azeroth and Argus. I think I've said this before. I believe it was Azeroth and Argus. They were the original two. That is why Azeroth is considered to be the creator. She has the dream. What happens in the dream? Life is created within the dream. Argus is made the Unmaker. He is called the Unmaker. I don't believe that he's called the Unmaker because Sargeras decided to call him the Unmaker. I believe that Argus was always meant to be the Unmaker. So they together would control creation. Things would be born from Azeroth and they would die in Argus. And their connection, their link to each other, would be what completes them, which may actually describe the different colors of Azerite versus Chasmite that had one color. It was a solid color. And Azerite having the two colors could mean that Sargeras took his sword, placed inside the sword the essence of Argus. Then when he stabbed his sword into Azeroth, the essence of Argus was returned to Azeroth. So Azeroth and Argus used to actually be one being in charge of creation. So a yin and yang type of being. And the Titans separated the two beings, or not the Titans, but the first ones took Azeroth, split Azeroth into two, making Azeroth and Argus two sides so that it would be easier to control. That's my theory currently of how all of this came into being. Holy, yeah, I imagine there will be another another speculation or another collaboration between me and Pyro. I'd love to do another one. It would be interesting to see more about the first ones, and I think the idea of Argus and Azeroth being the first ones holds the most weight. My idea of the Titans and the Old Gods perhaps being unified seems from a metaphysical interpretation of God. There's a ton of metaphysical stuff in WoW, and that's what led me to that line of speculation. I mean, it's still a good speculation theory, right? And if we find any evidence of it in the game, I'd be very happy to grab onto it. For now, it's kind of like my theory. It exists basically just because it makes logical sense. So there's no real evidence for my theory. It's more just that the lack of evidence of the other theories kind of supports my theory better. But that's why I'm not suggesting that my theory is the truth, because, well, it doesn't have to be the truth. If we know about the first ones, then who are the old ones? So the old ones, at least in World of Warcraft, are considered to be the old gods. But then you have old ones that's also referred to in many of the other areas of creation or of the great beyond. So the old ones can be a specific race, or it can just be something that is older than whatever the user that is talking about them is. But as far as I remember, the old ones pretty much exclusively refer to the old gods on Azeroth. At least the beings on Azeroth that speak about them. Are the Eternal Ones on the same power level like the Titans? They seem kind of weaker, except maybe Zaval. Zerial? Yes. Yes, I think they are on similar power levels. I don't think we've seen the true power of any of the first ones because it was not required for them to show it. They never needed to show their true power. But then it's also probably important to mention the Eternal Ones, unlike the Titans, weren't supposed to be warriors. They weren't supposed to fight anything. Remember, they were in charge of Azerite. Not Azerite. Anima. Right? They were in charge of the soul magic of the universe, collecting it and then redistributing it. So they never really had to be ready for war. They never really had to fight a war. Whereas the Titans very clearly bred for war. That's why you have beings like Agramar and Sargeras. Very, very powerful. So it can be that in a one-on-one battle, the Titans would basically kick the Eternal One's ass. And maybe Zuval is the only one that is a true Titan in that regard, because he's the only one that really looks very similar to the Titans as well. You know, if you exclude nipples, of course. The link between Argus and Azeroth would have been Shadowlands. It's possible. I mean, there's plenty of arguments about the Shadowlands and what the Shadowlands must have been or could have been. I think the one thing that stands out to me when it comes to the Shadowlands... Sorry, let me just sit down. I'm still very sore from the gym, and I went to the gym again today. So I'm not... Fuck me, man. I'm only just starting to heal from yesterday and the day before, and now I'm causing a lot of stiffness in other parts of my body again. But it has to be done. What was I saying? Oh yeah. I think the one thing I am convinced of is that the Shadowlands don't operate the way that they want us to believe it does. Nothing in the Shadowlands as we saw it seemed natural. The Shadowlands to me seemed incredibly artificial, as if it was meant to serve a very specific purpose, and it was meant to subjugate the original purpose of the Shadowlands. Good chatting with you this morning, man. I gotta go do my IRL dailies. Keep up the solid work, bro. Jordan, thank you so much for hanging out, man. Really appreciate you. Take care of yourself. Are the Cluxy on the same power level? Clubby, what are you talking about? Aren't the old ones equivalent powers to the first ones, but as opposite? If something powerful comes out of light, same goes with the void. Gringo, it would depend on what the first ones are, and then it would also depend on what the old ones are. Because the old ones don't have to be the opposite of the first ones. The Old Ones is a name that was created by the Cluxy very specifically as they were talking about their old masters, right? It doesn't have to be that their old masters is somehow tied to the first ones. The Cluxy would probably not even have known who the first ones are, because the first mentions we've ever had of first ones is in the Shadowlands from the brokers, who are trying to sort of decipher the language of the first ones. So they would have no reason to refer to anything as the opposite of the first ones, because they wouldn't even know the first ones exist. What role do you speculate Elune will play going into the future X-Packs? Alpha Sigma, I'm sort of torn. I feel like the last few expansions have really demystified Elune in a lot of ways, and so there is a part of me that feels like Blizzard may as well just reveal Elune at this point, because while we've not seen Elune yet, she's been so front and center in a number of the storylines that I feel like at this point the mystique is completely gone. You know, Elune used to be this very, very mysterious figure. We didn't even know if she was a god or not. We just sort of knew that the Night Owls at least worship her as one. But outside of that, we had no idea anything really about who Elune is. And I feel like now that mysticism no longer really exists. So I think we're going to see Elune in Midnight specifically. You know, the warrior of Elune. Elune's nature as the moon. I think Midnight is going to deal very heavily with Elune and Elune's storyline, so I'm really looking forward to that one. If the last Titan references Azeroth, who then wakes up? Then the planet would shatter. Can you imagine Azeroth being evacuated to a new world, a la World of Warcraft Reborn 2.0? Nick, okay, so this is a common misconception within World of Warcraft, and that is that when a Titan is born, the planet automatically shatters because the Titan breaks the planet. There's no reason to believe that that needs to happen. Especially since we know that Titans can turn themselves into celestial beings. You know, so they can literally become almost air-like. So I don't believe that Azeroth has to rip herself apart in order to be born. I think there are ways for her to, well, simply be born, right, without destroying Azeroth. And I'm not sure if Blizzard would even begin from just a normal financial perspective. I'm not sure a WoW 2.0 rebuild entire new world would serve any purpose from Blizzard's perspective. It would be cool, but I think you end up losing more than what you gain. So I don't necessarily think that that's... I don't think that's on the cards. I might be wrong, but I would be surprised. Pleasantly so. Can we really nitpick details if the books, the game, and the quests are story-wise off the lore path, and only the main quests are at least coherent, in line to each other? Dominic, it depends. When you say the books and the game and the quests are not on the same level, so in other words, they're all going in their own direction, what do you mean by that? Like, in what way are the books and the game differing? We have no evidence of Titans destroying their birth world like Celestials from the MCU. At least not at the moment. The one thing that I think most people refer to when they talk about that is Argus. But most people also don't keep in mind that Argus was born in a tremendous amount of turmoil, turmoil and hatred. Because he's been infused with Val for millennia. So obviously Argus had no real interest in preserving anything. Not his planet nor life, as it were. Azeroth is more powerful than Titans. Well, the Titans themselves say that Azeroth is more powerful than the Titans. Looks like everything was supposed to go to the Maw through Ouroboros. Some entities decided to do some recycling. Matt, absolutely agree with that. We barely know what a Luna is, to be honest. Essentially, she's an Eternal One, right? Nick, the only thing we have that kind of makes people believe that she is an Eternal One is the Winter Queen calls her sister. And she calls the Winter Queen sister. But I have already explained during Shadowlands why that isn't evidence at all. Because basically all that proves is that at the birth of the Winter Queen, Elune was in the Shadowlands. That's what it proves. When the Winter Queen was born, Elune was there. But it is entirely possible that Elune was there and maybe helped birth the Winter Queen? Or maybe just told the Winter Queen that they are sisters as a way to engross herself with the Eternal Ones, shall we say? So basically to drum up some support from the Eternal Ones. Was likely improperly birthed or otherwise forced by Sargeras. That's also true. Epic Tulu, how you doing, bro? I'm curious to see how will react Amanthul when he will see the world trees, as he was against it, reading from the volumes found in the Emerald Dream. Yeah, well, Amanthul was against a lot of things. The question, of course, is how will those things actually play out, and why was Amanthul against those things? Amanthul, I've said this before, he's one of the least trustworthy characters in World of Warcraft because he appears to be incredibly impulsive and also incredibly stubborn. But there's an intelligence and almost like a willful ignorance. So he feigns ignorance. But he knows more than what he lets on. So I would love to know why he was so against the creation of the world trees to begin with. This changes now after Dragonflight. I hope so. After I heard your last video about the good new player experience in DF and the approach to the player, not as a hero of the past, but a sidekick. Dominic, let's hope that that is exactly what continues to happen, right? Let's hope that Blizzard continues down this road and that, that video is absolutely correct. Because, again, I invite each and every one of you, if you don't believe me, start a new character or take one of your alts that have not leveled through Dragonflight yet and just take a look at the early quests in Dragonflight. Like when you go to the Dragon Isles, take a look at how the dragons respond to you. They don't know you. They don't know who you are. You're not a hero. You're not a champion. To them, you are absolutely nothing. You're a stranger in their lands. And they're nice to you because they haven't seen people or anything really in a very long time. But they have no loyalty towards you. In fact, you play a long time before they start showing any sort of interest in allowing you in. It feels very much like the perfect new player experience. Question, do you think with Metzen returning, we might see the Eternal One's power scale or roles changes adjusted? I personally don't think we can retcon them, but maybe Metzen can smooth things out. I'm trying to think, how do you smooth things out? Personally, in this instance, if I was Metzen, I would pretend as if Shadowlands doesn't exist. Even though it does exist, I would pretend it doesn't. Any of the power levels that it relays, I would ignore. Any of the information that it relays, I will ignore. And the reason for it is Shadowlands is such an unreliable narrator to begin with. There's so much in the Shadowlands that is just complete and utter bullshit that I think you could get away with that by simply saying, nah, the Shadowlands isn't true. Who cares? Dark, how you doing? They made us heroes after the events of ICC. That didn't really help them. Storytell, same with Kata. We stopped Deathwing, rebuilt the World Pillar, among other things. Dark, the thing is, I don't care what you call me. I care about the experience, but I do oftentimes wonder if the complaint, and this might be a very hot take, so I apologize ahead of time, but I wonder sometimes if the complaint about being a champion isn't completely wrong. And I don't mean that the player base is wrong, but that what the player base is actually complaining about isn't the thing that they say they're complaining about. Now, I've discussed this in the past. As a developer, your job, your role as a developer is to listen to player feedback and then try and drill down to the actual problem. So players could tell you, I hate PvP, it's way too difficult. And you might go, well, we need to rebalance the classes. But what you may find, if you really start paying attention to where the players are and how the players play, is that they're not worried about the actual PvP. It's the fact that they didn't sign up to do PvP in the open world and they're being attacked by everyone, right? So that could be one of the problems. Or it could be that in a certain area of the leveling experience or a certain part of the leveling experience, you get absolutely one shot by a character that's 2 or 3 levels above you. And, you know, the player base is just complaining that they hate PvP and PvP isn't fun. But the reason it's not fun is because if you're level 34 and you fight a level 36, the level 36 absolutely one-shots you and you don't have any chance to kill him, right? So that wouldn't, if you make changes thing to PvP at max level, that wouldn't fix the problem at level 34 and level 36, right? So oftentimes as a developer, you have to look beyond the complaint. So let's take the complaint here. Champion. Players feel like the game lost a lot of character when we became champions. But let's look at, when do players say the game lost? According to you guys in chat, when did this transition happen? When did you stop feeling like an adventurer and start feeling like just a powerful champion? When did that happen for all of you? I'm busy watching the Fallout series, Growfall. I think I'm on episode 2. Rather liching at the end game. The honest truth is, if I'm correct in the way that I'm reading it, it started in Wrath. The problem in Wrath was that it was so new that it had not yet had enough time to become a true problem. Because if you go back and you look at the expansions that players refer to that they loved playing through, they're basically always referring to Classic and TBC. Now, what is it about Classic and TBC that is different to Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, and onwards? Well, leveling in Classic and TBC is a lot more like a mini survival type game. The world is incredibly challenging. You need food, you need drink, you need to manage your resources incredibly well. You need to manage your backspace, you need to manage your gold. Every single element of the game had a reason for existing, and that reason was consistently justified. So, for example, gold wasn't just a number that you sometimes used. Gold was actually a fucking massive requirement within the game. Because without gold, you wouldn't be able to level up. Without gold, you wouldn't be able to learn all of your most potent spells. And as you leveled up, the spells even got more expensive. The gold gain, however, didn't really necessarily match that. So, gold was an actual mechanic within the game. It was important to get. So whenever a creature drops copper, you felt good about that because that's still loot, right? And that's valuable because I need this gold. The same is true for consumables. Consumables actually mattered. And the reason it mattered was because you needed it. You would die out in the world without food and drink. Okay, so the game, none of the resources within the game felt like it was just there to be there. None of the resources in the game was just a number. The same with your first mount. Your first mount actually served a number of purposes. Number one, it was a mount that allowed you to get through the world a little bit quicker, but it also made the world a lot more safe. Because prior to the mount, you couldn't just run through an area and outrun the mobs. If you pulled a mob on accident, there was a good chance that that mob would kill you. Or you would pull more and you would eventually die. The mount was the first time that you could feel relatively safe running through certain areas in the game and expect to hopefully not die as often. So every single thing, every element of the game had a reason and a purpose for existing, and none of it just felt like fluff. You compare that to retail WoW, and this really started in Wrath of the Lich King, and from there it just became worse and worse. In Wrath of the Lich King, the leveling experience was finally fleshed out in its entirety. The leveling experience was also made a lot easier, so you didn't need as many consumables as you used to. You still had your ammo, and Warlock still needed soul shards. Bag space became much less of an issue. Bags were a lot more readily available, especially now that you had all the expansions max level bags that were still around. People could get bigger bags very, very quickly. The world was fleshed out. You no longer had these dry areas where you would just have to grind in order to get from one level to the next in order to continue questing. And overall, the world started to feel a lot more theme parky rather than sandboxy. And I think that is when people say, I don't like feeling like a champion. I miss feeling like just a foot soldier. I think they miss all of that They don't actually give a shit about the title. The title doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter that everyone refers to you as champion. It doesn't matter that you are super powerful and you're killing super powerful beings. What matters is the fact that the world no longer presents you with any sort of problems, right? The world no longer presents a character in and of itself. The world is simply a means to an end. And that is what people miss. The problem there that I will just immediately throw out, how do you fix that? I'll ask you guys, how would you fix that? You only get dazed if they hit you in the back, so you could work around daze. Yeah, there were ways to get through any sort of area on a running mount, on like a ground mount, without even getting dazed. Clabby, how you doing? You guys think it's too late to fix? How many of you agree with Clabby that it is too late to fix? Like, nothing we do now can fix this. It's just a nightmare and it's over. Because I will be honest. I reluctantly agree with you. I don't see how you fix it. The problem is that if Blizzard made the world harder, you would inevitably get a lot of people that will be very angry and upset about the fact that the world is harder. And it's not just because they're complaining for complaining's sake. They have a legitimate reason to complain. World of Warcraft, unlike vanilla, is designed around the concept of alts. Vanilla was never designed around the concept of alts. In vanilla, if you had an alt, you had too much time on your hands. Most players in vanilla had one character, and that was your only character. It took way too long to level. It took way too long to take your character through the world. Very few people was going to attempt the second one. That's no longer true today. Today, the overwhelming majority of players have at least one extra character. I would not be surprised if they have more. So if you now made the world super hard to level through, you're also making it, remember, super hard now for alts to level through this world. How are you going to stop people from not getting super annoyed at that? Super angry, super annoyed, how dare you? Mounted combat system with ranged attacks to use against flying mounts. A mounted combat system could be really cool, but I don't know if that would fix the world. Need to exist beyond the character. I want to be a cog in the machine, not the entire machine itself. I think you can only fix that by ending WoW 1 in parallel. So, I've said this before, years ago, back when the Shill Show was still a thing. But WoW 2, I do not believe will ever happen. Ever. And I'll tell you why. If you're the developer working on World of Warcraft and you start broaching the concept of WoW 2, there's a number of fundamental conversations that you now have to have with yourself. The first one is, what is the potential upside versus the potential downsides of this move? Potential upside, WoW 2. New engine, new graphics, new world. All of the old mistakes are gone, and we can make a brand new game with full hindsight being 2020. We know the mistakes that we made in the original. We just won't make those mistakes again. That means we can actually make a really good game this time around. What are the downsides? Well, we lose 20 years worth of gameplay. We just lose it. We also lose 20 years worth of cosmetics and mounts and pets and all of the collectibles that players like, and some players are still hunting. So you have to ask yourself a fundamental question there. And that's where you will always end up if you are the developer making this decision. Am I convinced that ending WoW 1 and starting WoW 2 will bring back enough players or bring enough new players into the game to make up for all the players that I will undoubtedly lose? Because you will lose players. The only question you can ask, and the only question that you can really wonder about, is how many players will I lose? But you will lose players. A lot of players that play WoW because it's their home. It's what they've played forever. WoW 2 is not going to be their home. They're not going to necessarily keep playing. Just because they played WoW 1 does not mean they'll go on to play WoW 2. So you are going to lose a lot of players. You're going to lose even more because they'll be losing the pets and the mounts and the stuff that they've collected for the last 20 years. They're obviously not going to be happy about that. Now, you could make an argument and say, well, you could always give the players all of those things, but now you're just taking a lot of the mistakes that you made in WoW 1 and you're automatically bringing it to WoW 2. One of the mistakes in WoW 1 is that there are far too many mounts in the game. It sort of devalues the rarity and therefore the prominence or the prestige of mounts in World of Warcraft. Remember what I said earlier about vanilla, where a mount actually mattered because a mount had a purpose and it was really difficult to get? That's no longer the case in World of Warcraft. So if you just gave everyone all of their old mounts and pets, you are bringing one of the biggest problems in WoW 1 to WoW 2 in order not to upset people in losing all of the stuff that they've collected. So you can't do that. You want to start from scratch. So you are going to lose players. And then you ask yourself, how many will we get? Because if you could guarantee that you will get more players than what you lose, they would probably do it. But then you'd also have to ask yourself, well, how many more players? Because if it's only 100,000 more, so we lose 500,000 players, but we gain 600,000 players, that's not worth it. The amount of money and time and effort that would have to go into a WoW 2, 100,000 extra players is not cutting it. So it will have to be something like double, 3 times, maybe 4 times the amount of players gained than lost. And there's no one in the world that can make that bet. There's no one in the world that can say, we'll absolutely nail that. So I fundamentally think WoW 2 is an absolute pipe dream. It's something that I don't believe will ever happen. And then to the crowd that says, well, you can have both of them exist at the same time. No, you can't. We are already, I think, risking a lot with Classic being now almost a complete standalone game of retail WoW. So, Classic went from just being a retelling of the old WoW to now with Season of Discovery being a full-blown world in and of itself. And that's risky because you risk splitting your player base. And that's usually very dangerous for a game because you can very easily run into a place where you have a shit ton of players, but you don't have enough players for any one specific game. So WoW has 7.5 million players, but eventually you have 100,000 playing this, 50,000 playing this, 1 million playing this, 1 million playing that, and all of the games are suffering because they just don't have enough of a community to operate. If you kept WoW 1 going and you made WoW 2, you're running that risk where a lot of players keep playing WoW 1, some players start playing WoW 2, but now neither game has a big enough community to actually support an MMO because MMOs require people. So I wouldn't risk that either. Fundamentally, if you go through it, no matter how you go through it, you just keep coming back to the same starting point or the same conclusion. WoW 2 can never work. It really doesn't make sense on the whole of it for it to work. It's just too big of a gamble and the upsides are not obvious. I don't think WoW will go free to play anytime soon either. I could be wrong about that because I do think there's an argument to be made. And this is an interesting one because it was actually made by the former president of Blizzard Entertainment, Mike Ybarra, who said that from his perspective, gamers will eventually run into subscription fatigue. And I think that might actually be on the money. If you think about the amount of things that we subscribe to today, the amount of services that require your subscription today. So it used to be that if you were a WoW player, you would be subscribed to World of Warcraft and you'd be subscribed to Netflix, right? And maybe you'd be subscribed to Spotify. Those were the only real things that you would ever need to be subscribed to, so that was fine. Think about it today. You're subscribed to World of Warcraft, you're subscribed to Spotify, or whatever other music platform you use. You're subscribed to Netflix, you have to subscribe to Prime, you have to subscribe to Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Hulu. There's like, what, 10, 15 sites that you have to subscribe to in order to get all of the TV series and movies that launches in the world. Maybe you want to subscribe to Game Pass on PC, Microsoft's Game Pass. That's another $15 a month that you have to fork out just to be able to play the games on there. And then you still, YouTube Premium is another subscription. Everything has become a subscription. Everything is a thing that you now have to pay for, which is, quite frankly, I think it's going to reach a point where players just go, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep all of these subscriptions going anymore. This is too much for me. And in that sense, then maybe it would be worth going free to play and instead, using something like the Trading Post. I think the Trading Post could be a good way of, and the players are going to hate me, but if WoW was to go free to play, the way that I would do it is I would take the Trading Post, have the current system of the Trading Post. You guys know you do a couple of quests and it gives you 1,000 extra trading tenders. You make that into an actual battle pass system. So once a month, you have a premium track and you have a free track. The free track gives you 1,000 trading tenders and maybe a couple of, useless shit. But then the premium track gives you 2,000 trading tenders if you complete all of it. And it gives you a free mount or a free pet or whatever, right? But it's completely free to play. So if you want to buy the battle pass, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. That's a way I think that they can make a lot of money if they were to go free to play, because I think a lot of players would do that. I think a lot of players would actually buy into that. Or you could do what Blizzard is doing now. Plunderstorm, for example, would work incredibly well as a free-to-play battle royale, and the renown system for Plunderstorm already basically functions like a battle pass. The only thing it requires now is a premium track, so you pay $5 and then you get extra cool loot and cosmetics and stuff. So that's definitely a thing that you can do. So while you can't necessarily monetize WoW, the MMO, you can make a bunch of stuff around the MMO that you can monetize. Remix, for example, is a good... you can add an actual premium battle pass to Remix that gives players that do the Remix stuff, extra cosmetics at the end of the Remix. So if Blizzard wanted to go free to play, they certainly have enough content that they can monetize to probably make even more money than what they're currently making. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that they want to look at. There's also the fact that a lot of WoW players became MMO players, having a taste of other systems. Epic Tulu, are you referring to games like Final Fantasy XIV? So are you saying WoW players have become MMO players because of games like Final Fantasy 14? Because I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think the overwhelming majority of WoW players still do not play any other games but WoW. I think the overwhelming majority of WoW players still have only ever played WoW. WoW is a very unique MMO in that it's one of the few games on the market that managed to convert a bunch of non-gamers into specifically WoW players. They're not gamers. They don't play any other game. How do I know this? I've met people like that. I had people like that in my guilds. They've never played anything else. Their PC exists with literally one game installed on it, and that is WoW. They have Battle.net, and they have WoW. That's it. They don't know what Steam is. They don't give a shit about Steam. They've never bought another game. They've never even tried another game. In fact, I would go so far as to say that there's a lot of WoW players that don't even know that there are other games. Not saying that they think WoW is the only game in the world. They just don't know what any of the other games is because they don't care. They play WoW. So, no, in that regard, I think WoW is pretty safe. It has a very large base audience that only plays WoW and that refuses to play anything else. And that's a huge plus. That's a massive plus for any game. Who stopped playing WoW, they're not currently playing WoW, so either they stopped playing games entirely or they moved to MMOs that did specific things better, like PvP. If you are someone that only played WoW your entire life, you're probably, if you are, so I can only speak about, I know one girl specifically who have quit World of Warcraft, and the day she quit World of Warcraft, she also sold her PC. Like, she was very angry during Shadowlands. She quit playing World of Warcraft during Shadowlands, and that day she also sold her PC because she literally used her PC for just one thing, and that was WoW. Nothing else, right? She had no need for anything else. And so the day she sold her, the day she quit WoW, the PC would have become a very expensive paperweight. So, yeah, she just moved on. The fact that one person like that exists suggests that there is indeed others that exist like this as well. I play other games, but I always play WoW as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that all WoW players don't play other games, just to be clear. I think there's a massive amount of WoW players that play, obviously, every other game, or a lot of other games. But I do think there is a small subset of the player base that they only play WoW. They've never played anything else, and they don't care about anything else. OR, how you doing? As much as people complain about PvP, WoW PvP is still much better than any other MMO I've played. OR, from what I understand, Guild Wars 2 has better PvP, but I've never played it, so I don't know. Right? I am basically talking from other people's perspectives here. I've never played it, so I have no idea. ASL was so bad, not surprised. I unsubbed. I used to be an MMO gamer, but WoW is the only MMO I play today. Well, I play Black Desert too, but it's so different, hard to compare. I'm definitely not an MMO player. I play WoW because I love the story. I don't play other MMOs. As a general rule, I'll try out other MMOs, but I'll pretty much always return to World of Warcraft as my MMO because I like the story the best. But in terms of games, I play literally anything but MMOs. Like, I'll play all games as long as it's not an MMO. I find MMOs in general to be quite boring. And I hate to say this because I know there's a lot of people that love their MMOs. I find them super boring, and the reason for it is I'm very much a solo player. It's very difficult for me to play with other people because I get annoyed. I don't really want to play with other people, if I'm honest. And so I prefer to play games where it's just me playing rather than having to rely on other people. So, for example, right now we're playing a lot of Dragon's Dogma on Twitch. Shout out if you guys want to join, by the way. Just hit the link in the description down below. I stream definitely Tuesdays to Thursdays and sometimes over the weekends as well. But I play a lot of Dragon's Dogma, and in that, if I die to a massive boss, it's because I fucked up, right? And I can fix my mistake. But if I'm dying in WoW, it's usually because someone else screwed up, and now I'm being punished because this other person is stupid and they don't know how to play. So that just means I don't want to do that. If I'm playing with you, you have to be brilliant, otherwise I get annoyed. So yeah, I don't play a lot of MMOs. I play mostly for lore. Gringo, that's also fine. I think every single person plays the way that they play and love what they play, you know? And as long as you have a game that you enjoy, I think that's cool. I don't mind. I'm happy with anyone playing anything. I like Shadowlands. I don't like the Savannah storyline at all, but Shadowlands didn't make me unlove WoW. That is definitely an unpopular opinion, Brit Girl. I hated Shadowlands. I will maintain for the rest of time that Shadowlands is and will always be the worst game I have ever played in my life. Game, not just expansion for WoW. It was terrible in every respect. I don't look at a single thing in Shadowlands and think this was decent. Every single thing that could have been decent in Shadowlands was just completely ruined because, from what I can tell at least, Blizzard seemed to have really shit ideas about how the game should be operated. So, you know, for example, Torghast was a thing that had so much potential, and it was ruined because Blizzard clearly didn't understand how roguelites are supposed to work. And so they decided to make a roguelite that isn't a roguelite, but wants to be one. Poorly, but still. Korthia was... Oh my... Korthia wasn't even worth talking about. I thought the way the expansion was handled, the story was told, it was all just bad. I was not a fan of Shadowlands. There's some lore elements of Shadowlands that's very cool. And those are the things that I keep going back to because I like those. But yeah, overall, I think Shadowlands could never have happened, and World of Warcraft would have been better as a result of that. And I'm not taking anything away from people that enjoyed Shadowlands. You are welcome to. As I said before at the beginning of the stream, every human being is going to enjoy different things. That's the whole point of MMOs. They're supposed to cater to a lot of different people. So it means that not everything is going to cater to everyone. And that includes expansions. Some people will play an expansion and they'll think, this is really awesome. I really enjoy this. Others will play an expansion and they'll not like it as much. It's fine, right? It's not meant to, like, not everyone is meant to like everything the same way. If that was the case, we'd all have trouble finding fucking partners. Because imagine if you see a girl that you think is just the cutest, but it also happens to be the fact that every other man in the world thinks that this girl is just the cutest. That would be terrible. It kind of helps if you're one of the guys that thinks she's cute, but there are also other girls that other guys think is cute. That way you're not fighting about 3.5 billion people. You know. So yeah, we like... Humans liking different things, I think, is cool. And I embrace that. For the most part. I don't know how they made a worse WoD, but Shadowlands is up there. I liked Warlords of Draenor. That's my unpopular opinion. That's my hot take. I thought Warlords of Draenor was actually good. I understand why people hated Warlords of Draenor. I fully understand why you hated it, and you are not wrong for hating it. It was a terrible expansion. I fully agree with you. But I loved it. Because I was a raider at the time. And all I did in Warlords of Draenor was level characters and raid with those characters. And because there was nothing else to do, it also meant that I didn't have to do any world quests or bullshit. I could just take my character, do dungeons, and do raids, and that. Right? I didn't have to keep everything else up. I didn't have to worry about farming anything. I could just play what I enjoyed at the time. So I liked it, even though I can fully understand why everyone else hated it. Many had to overlook a lot of shit to continue playing WoD in Shadowlands. I missed WoD because I quit a month after Cataclysm launched and didn't come back until BFA. Well, many people hated World of Draenor, so maybe that's a good thing you missed it. I have a couple of other things I want to share with you guys. As we're nearing the end of the podcast, I do have a couple of stories. These are brand new that I think is really cool and might actually be a little bit more experimentation from Blizzard's side. So we have these things. It's called Nightmare Resonance Crystals, and it allows you to pick up herbs in Season of Discovery. Now, they specifically work you get this as a reward from the Emerald Wardens over here, and they work inside Nightmare Incursions to allow players that don't have herbalism to still loot herbs, which I actually think is really cool. I think it's really cool for a couple of reasons. One, it creates a number of really interesting ideas for retail, because I think you could do this in retail as well. My personal wish in retail, maybe I'm going to piss a lot of people off here. So if I am pissing you off with this idea, pretend like I'm joking. Just act as if I'm telling a massive joke and you won't be so angry. I believe that all gathering quests in World of Warcraft should be available to all characters in WoW. I don't think gathering quests or gathering professions should be part of the profession pool in World of Warcraft, for the reason most players in World of Warcraft already have alts that they do the gathering on for things like herbs and things like ores. If you speak to people who sell this stuff on the auction house, you don't make anywhere near as much money as you used to make in World of Warcraft selling the ores. You make far more money turning the ores into something than what you make just straight up selling the ores. So this suggests that most people don't really give a shit. They have alts that they're going to be collecting this stuff on anyways. So by moving all of it to all characters just have access to it, I think opens you up to explore and experiment with professions a lot more in World of Warcraft, and maybe creating a couple of new professions that maybe go a little bit further than what we currently have. Especially with the new leveling system, I will also say the new profession system that actually uses a lot of mats from other professions. I find it incredibly annoying when I need to craft a bunch of stuff in order to level, but now I need alchemy shit, and I'm not an alchemist. So now I have to go to the auction house, buy the alchemy stuff, just so I can make one thing, so that I can get the knowledge, right? And then I have to buy it again, just to get the knowledge for the next item. It's annoying. Whereas if you granted me the ability to just mine and herb and skin on my own, I think that would be a lot cooler. It would also give you, again, as I said, a lot more freedom to explore these gathering professions a lot more, because now everyone has access to it. So you can really deep dive into how do you make these professions very, very interesting. And how do you make them more fun? An item like this is maybe the happy medium. So it's not an item that will allow you to permanently loot or herb or mine, but an item that when you use it, you can do it for like an hour, say, for example, or you can do it for 24 hours. So players can go farm these items and then use them in order to do. That's maybe a nice sort of midway point between not making it available for everyone, but still somewhat available, right? So everyone can do it. How do you guys feel about that? And I realize a lot of people are talking about archaeology. I think archaeology should return, but not in the way that it used to be. I think archaeology needs to change fundamentally, and I want Blizzard to take their time in bringing it back, because I think if you do archaeology as a profession, you should feel like Indiana Jones. If you do not feel like Indiana Jones, if you do not have that same experience, then archaeology fails. I think there's enough things in WoW, in most of the expansions that we've done, that played around with elements that could definitely make it into the profession. So in Dragonflight, for example, you guys remember that the Niffin? The Niffin that would go on... he would take you on these little adventures, and you would get into this cave, and you have to sniff stuff out and then solve a bit of a riddle. Imagine if those caves were a natural part of like the actual experience for archaeology. Then imagine if you had things similar in these caves. So these are actually longish caves, but then you guys remember in Legion, you had these quests where you had to solve, like run on the lines, right? And make it to the other end. Or you had these where you had to sort of fly through these different rings, right? And you had these different things that could punch you up, or you fly on your mount through these different rings. Imagine if those things were all incorporated into these brand new archaeology quests or archaeological experience. So if you do go into archaeology, you are unlocking. So you get sort of on the trail of something, and you start looking and looking, and it ends in this giant dungeon that you just go and solve a lot of mysteries and a lot of riddles, and you learn a bunch of stuff from the world. Would that not make archaeology absolutely phenomenal? Like, would you guys not enjoy that? I was never a fan of the professions being limited on a character. Is there an actual benefit to preventing one character from having all professions other than justifying the auction house? Epic Thulu, I would be surprised if having all of the professions on all characters would even limit the auction house, because remember this, just because you can make something does not mean that you're going to level to a high enough level to make that something. And then more importantly, just because you can make something does not mean that you're going to do the work to get the mats to make the something. So it is entirely possible that even if you made all professions available to all characters, like there's no limitation on professions, most players would still basically only focus on one or two, because that's more than enough work. And the others will sort of just kind of exist. And the only time you'd actually get people that's completely done and no longer need anything from anyone else would be right at the end of the expansion, where it doesn't matter anyways anymore. And the way Britgirl does it is basically how a lot of people do it. A lot of people I know play exactly that way. They have a bunch of alts. The alt literally just works for the main. They don't do anything on their alts to sell on the auction house because they don't have the time for it. They're playing on their main. So they go on their alts, they mine a bunch of herbs, or herb a bunch of flowers, and mine a bunch of ore, make a bunch of stuff, and then send all of that shit to their alt or to their main. And that makes their main raid ready. That makes their main, ready for whatever they're doing, right? So I don't think you'd be impacting a lot of people by making it available for all classes. I think from this perspective, Blizzard is probably just looking at RPG, right? The ability for players to feel a little bit different, to feel like you've made a different decision than literally everyone else. So kind of feel a little bit more unique in that regard. Like Indiana Jones, as long as I don't have to teach in a university, I try and do everything. Wasn't the limit more due to the combat bonuses they used to provide? Dean Murray, yes, but I mean, now we're talking very, very far back, right? I'm talking about current day. So I don't think he asked what is the reason for the limitations historically, or was that actually what you were asking? Because historically, there were a number of professions that were really good, like seriously good. Some professions were super OP for some classes, and so you almost always had to make a decision because you couldn't have all of the professions with all of the cool stuff. So you would have to ask yourself, right, Am I going to take this profession because it actually gives me 20% increased haste? Or am I going to take this profession and get a little bit more survivability? Because I can't have both, right? Because I also need this other one. So yeah, but that's no longer the case, right? That's all been removed from WoW, so it doesn't matter. Gloves were cool as well. Yes, that's true. I'm super, super, super excited for this. I think this is a good move. I'd like to see, man, I wish I could speak to Blizzard, like anyone at Blizzard, and ask them whether or not they actually treat these things as experiments for retail, or if they actually just do this for Season of Discovery and they have no plans of ever implementing this into retail. I like to know what the thought process is from Blizzard when it comes to Season of Discovery. Not talking about ancient history. Yeah, there you go. All right, so another thing that I needed to share with you guys, because well, it's somewhat important, I think. Now, obviously, a lot of people are gonna have a lot of opinions about this, but apparently Blizzard and NetEase have finally hashed out a deal. If I'm not mistaken, NetEase used to be the publisher that published World of Warcraft in China. Now, for those of you that aren't fully up to date, although nowadays you should be, you cannot, as a Western company, sell your game in China if it is not published by a Chinese company. So even a company as large as Microsoft needs to have a publisher in China in order to publish the game in China to Chinese players. Then, of course, I think last year or maybe the year before, something happened between Blizzard and NetEase. No one knows. We have no idea what happens, but something bad must have happened between Blizzard and NetEase, because out of the blue, it was announced that it will not continue. The partnership will not continue. NetEase will no longer publish. And I can only imagine that it had something to do with either Bobby Kotick or someone in the Activision Blizzard sphere, because as soon as they joined up with Microsoft, NetEase was happy to come back in. Right? Bobby washing his hands from dealing with China? I don't know if it's... it could be, but I don't know if it is Bobby Kotick, right? No one ever confirmed anything. I personally think this is awesome. If you are a Chinese player, this is obviously something that you were looking forward to because you lost access to your game. And that's obviously something that you want. What I don't think this is awesome for is, well, it's kind of weird to me, the amount of Western companies that pretend to care about all of these social issues and then go into partnerships with the government of China, effectively. It's just awkward, as far as I'm concerned, because China is not a country that takes human rights seriously, right? Like, not at all. They've never done. So it's just kind of awkward to me. You preach about human rights and you care about human rights, but then you're more than welcome to sell out to the Chinese government when it comes to making money from them. So from an ideological perspective, I don't like this move because I think I'm neutral on the move. I couldn't give two shits, right? I'm not gaining or losing anything here, but I do think it's sort of scumbag. But then I'm happy for Chinese players because without this move, they wouldn't be able to play WoW. So it's sort of like a weird space, I guess, to find yourself in. They even showed destroying the Blizzard statues. Wonder if they are going to rebuild them. Yeah, they'll probably rebuild them or just buy new ones. Also, remember, they no longer... this isn't a deal between Blizzard necessarily and NetEase. This is a deal between Microsoft and NetEase. Right? Because it belongs to Microsoft now. Now I'm going to take moral arguments from a company that supports slavery. Pretty much. Pretty much. What do you guys feel about this? Like, how do you guys feel about this? I don't even want to talk about the Bobby Kotick TikTok bullshit. I don't know how TikTok works. I was on TikTok once as a user, and I was very confused by the whole thing because it didn't seem to show me anything that I wanted to see. So when I'm scrolling through YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels, I am specifically looking for people who fall. Like funny videos, right? People who get hurt, people who fall on ice. Basically anything like that I find super funny, and I can entertain myself for hours watching people fall on ice. TikTok didn't want to show me any of that. No matter how long I scrolled for, I didn't see one of those videos, so I was like, nah, I fucking don't like this platform. And I've never been back. So I don't care if Bobby Kotick... Like, look, if I'm going to choose one place for Bobby Kotick to destroy, TikTok seems good. I could have given two shits. So if Bobby Kotick wants to move into TikTok and destroy it, he has my blessings. Go for it, fam. I'll be watching on the sidelines with some popcorn. Because I could care less. I think Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts are far superior because they already have the algorithm dialed in for me. As soon as I start scrolling, I see people falling. The other day, I saw a lady slip on a tile floor. It was raining, and so the floor was wet. And this lady tried to put her plant outside. And as she stepped back, her foot went. And I saw a lady, probably well in her 50s, do a perfect split, bro. I mean, a perfect split. Gravity took the wheel, and that lady went down to the ground in a split that would make gymnasts jealous. And her husband is standing with his back to her, blissfully unaware of his wife's immense pain, what would be described, I guess, as insane amounts of pain. And that made me happy. I started my day that way, and I was like, this is a great day. That's a good video. I separate the Chinese people from the government, that they themselves have a history of protesting. I don't want those people to suffer. I mean, whenever I speak about a country, I am never speaking about the individual people of that country. I'm speaking about the government of the country. It would be stupid to judge an entire group of people from a country in any way, shape, or form. Because you're dealing with what? In the case of China, you're dealing with more than 1 billion people. How can you make any claims about the people, right? That would be true for the people. It would be silly. So, yeah, whenever I speak about a country, I'm talking about the government of the country. Now, Peter, I mean, going there, you'll learn about the people that you interact with. But you still will not know about the people as a whole. Because again, just think about, I mean, I'll use South Africa as an example because I obviously live here. If you were to ask me, what are South Africans like? My first question to you would be, which South Africans? Like, who exactly are you talking about? Are you asking about white people? Are you asking about black people? Are you asking about coloreds? And by the way, that in South Africa is not considered racist. It's what we call mixed race South Africans. They call themselves coloreds. Like, are you asking about, like, which one of the groups are you asking about? Are you asking about Indians? Because we have a bunch of Indians in South Africa as well. People actually from India, not Native Americans. That would be weird. But we do have a bunch of Indians here as well. And then I would ask you, all right, so let's say, for example, you said, well, what about black people? I'd be like, okay, which black people? There's 10 civilizations, right? 10 different tribes of black people in South Africa. Which one would you like to know about? And then maybe you'd say Sepedi. I'd be like, okay, which Sepedi nation? Because depending on where they live in the northern province or in the Limpopo province, they're going to be different, right? They're going to be very different depending on where they live. Those that live closer to the cities are going to have a very different outlook than those that live in the rural areas. If you were to say, well, what about white people? Again, which white people? Are you talking about English-speaking white people or Afrikaans-speaking white people? Because they'd be super different. And then you say Afrikaans-speaking white people. Where? Polokwane, Pretoria, Mpumalanga, Cape Town, Durban. Which group of white people would you like to know about? Because again, they are like night and day. The only thing they have in common is the language that they speak, and they don't even speak with the same accent. So it would be impossible for me to answer that question as on a national scale. I could answer the question on an individual scale if you were to ask me about people from your hometown, Polokwane. All right, I can answer that, right? Because, well, I grew up there, and they're very similar to me in some ways, very dissimilar to me in other ways. Hence why I left. But I couldn't answer it as a whole, and I think that's true for all countries. I don't think there's a single country in the world that you can look at the country and make a claim about the people that live there that would be true of the people that live there. I don't even think that you could make a claim of the people that live there that would be true of the majority of the people. Because more often than not, like even political things, very few people vote for people that they agree 100% with. So just because you can make the argument the North of America is more Democrat, for example, does not mean that the people in the North of America is the same, right? Because you might get people in the North of America that vote Democrat, but they only vote for the Democrats because they like this policy. They hate all the others, but they like this policy a bit more than what they like the Republican policy. So now they're voting Democrat, right? So again, how the fuck do you make an argument about a whole group of people? It's nigh impossible. We could go, Zerial, like we could go to the most homogenous countries on Earth, right? And that would be the Scandinavian nations, probably Japan. So some of your Asian nations comes to mind here, where you have probably the highest level of homogeny in the nation. And even there, I think if you were to ask someone from Norway, are people in Oslo the same as people in rural Norway? They would say no. No, there's big differences between the groups, right? So yeah, it's impossible. So yeah, when I speak about countries, I speak about the government, or I speak about perceived sort of universal things that people think about. But I rarely, if ever, will refer to the people. It would be fucking impossible. I don't know how you would do that. Navajo, Pueblo, Apache, Cherokee. I don't know how to pronounce those other two names, by the way. But Matt, yeah, pretty much, right? Like, how are you going to speak for all of those groups of people? It's impossible. Republican and live in a blue state and vice versa. Yeah, most people are single-issue voters anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Anyways, I want to talk about the final thing. How many of you saw this? How many of you saw this news? What is your thoughts on this? Because I saw a lot of people very angry at this. So to give you a little bit of insight into what this is, if you didn't know about it, Blizzard made a change to Season of Discovery that basically means that if you're a new player that literally just started playing, you cannot sell anything on the auction house. You can't send things to people in the mailbox. You can basically do nothing, right? For the first 30 days. So any interactions with players in World of Warcraft is very, very limited in so far as what you can do. So this, of course, becomes a pretty interesting scenario. Now, for those of you that might be wondering why, bots is a huge problem in Season of Discovery, basically in Classic as a whole. And what I will say, I hate the fact that this is so over the top, because it is incredibly restrictive, and it sort of, in an MMO, it makes very little sense, because an MMO is all about the community and that communal feel. The problem, of course, is this isolates new players. Like, if you're a new player in World of Warcraft Season of Discovery, you are entirely isolated from the rest of the community in almost every regard, because you can't trade items, you can't send stuff in the mailbox, you can't sell stuff to on the auction house. So you're basically limited to your own little bubble while you wait for your first 30 days to finish, which is oftentimes the most important parts of a game, right? It's those first experiences. But then at the other side of things, how do you stop the bots in World of Warcraft? Because I do think that this kind of proves that Blizzard is indeed serious about stopping the bots. Remember, we used to say, we don't think Blizzard actually gives a shit about the bots in WoW. And the reason we don't think Blizzard gives a shit about the bots in WoW is they make a lot of money off of the bots. The bots have to buy game time in order to play the game. Why not, right? This is a quick and easy way of doing it. This shows that Blizzard is willing to say, well, actually, no. We don't want bots. We're actually willing to, because some bots may continue and will actually now be forced to buy 2 months of game time in order to get through this. But I don't know if a lot of bot owners is going to consider 2 months before they can start selling gold a decent investment, if that makes sense. Not to mention the fact that it makes it much easier for Blizzard to catch. How so? Because what you will get from these gold farmers and these sellers, these bots, they'll basically be sitting around doing nothing for the first month while they wait for the restriction to play off so that they can ultimately start botting and doing things and selling the shit that they make. So Blizzard should be able to catch them a lot quicker, because you just need to look at characters that literally just do the same thing over and over again for a month and never interact with anything or anyone else. I assume that's part of the reason it would make detection a little bit easier. Problem is, it's a temporary band-aid. What happens after the restriction is removed? They could always steal accounts. Yeah, but account stealing has always been a problem in World of Warcraft. That is kind of your job, to keep your account safe, right? Blizzard can only do that much, and as long as the Blizzard servers have not been compromised, Blizzard is kind of doing everything they can, at least, in order to keep your account safe. So I wouldn't worry too much about the account safety thing in that regard. Cameron, well, what do you mean, what happens when the restriction is removed? Do you mean what happens at the end of the first month? Or do you mean that Blizzard will eventually remove this restriction? Because I think if Blizzard sees that it makes no difference and the gold sellers are still doing gold selling things, then they'll obviously remove the restriction, because the restriction doesn't mean anything. But the first month, Cameron, I really do think is Blizzard just sort of going, let's make it more expensive for these bots to operate. And hopefully that actually dissuades a bunch of bots from continuing to operate. Because remember, it's a business, and it's a good business, but it is also usually a business that operates on very small margins. It doesn't have massive margins that it operates on. So if you now have to have a 2-month subscription in order to actually sell anything to anyone, that becomes super pricey, especially for companies that have thousands of bots. Because some of these guys literally do run around with thousands and thousands of bots that they just have consistently grinding stuff. effectively, you have to increase your expenditure by double, at 100% increase in expenditure. And you're not automatically going to 100% your profits, are you? Your profits are going to remain exactly the same, but you're going to spend a shit ton more money on making that exact same amount of money. So I think that's what Blizzard is banking on. You just make it so expensive for the botters that there's no point for many of the botters to continue. Well, Matt, by stopping gold sellers, you're automatically stopping botters because the botters rely on gold sellers in order to actually sell the stuff that they bought and grind, right? So you're you're sort of killing both issues at the same time. I think the Epic Thulu, you are correct. It also really now hurts ban waves, right? Because you may say, as a botter, take the hit for the first month, and then after that, it's profits all the way, baby. But if a ban wave hits, and we already know, so if you listen to Thor, I don't know if you guys know who Thor is. He's a Twitch streamer. But if you listen to Thor, Blizzard usually knows exactly who the botters are. Like, they know. It's not as if this is a surprise to them. They are usually very much aware of the fact that these are botters. The reason they wait for ban waves to happen, and Thor explained this is what they used to do, people are obviously paying for these bots. There's people buying these bots from the botters, right? Or from the people that's making the bots and all the rest of it. If you ban all of these bots in one go, you cause a lot of harm to the people making these bots because they're going to be hit with a shit ton of chargebacks now that the bots no longer work. So you basically want to hit these in ban waves of like 6 months. This means that if you sort of work your ban waves in 6-month increments, the guy will have the first month that he can't sell anything. So that's double. Then he'll have 5 months of making some money. Then all of his shit gets banned. Now he has to do another 30 days of game time before he can start selling again. So it is basically, it becomes super expensive super quickly. And you could even now make the argument, if Blizzard really wanted to kill these guys, you ban the bots every 2 months rather than every 6 months. Because basically now it means these guys have no way of making money. Because before, you were just relying on hurting them with PayPal. Because people would charge back on PayPal and they'd be hit with each and every single one of those chargebacks. And chargebacks are quite expensive on PayPal, by the way. It's not cheap if someone charges back on PayPal. So you were relying on PayPal, where now you're relying on you, right? You're the one who's making a shit ton of money off of these guys. So if you start banning every 2 months, I think you'll basically destroy botting almost overnight. What if they brace it and give us mission tables for alts? I don't know if mission tables would work, Dean. The problem that I've had with mission tables in World of Warcraft is it doesn't feel like the game ever really figured out how the mission table should be optimal, right? Like, they never managed to figure out exactly what would be good in the mission table. It went through so many different iterations, and none of the iterations felt brilliant. It was either way too overpowered, way too underpowered, or just kind of wet noodle. So I don't know if we'll ever see the mission table again. Alpha Sigma, I'm literally just going off of the information that I have from watching a lot of people who usually like to deal with these cybersecurity kind of stuff for companies like Thor, and there's a couple of other guys that I follow, white hat hackers basically. And then just sort of thinking about the issue and thinking how this could actually play out. But I'm sure the one thing that I'm absolutely certain of is that you will never stop botting. Ever. No matter how you try, no matter what you try, it will always exist in some form in every single game. The only thing you can hope for is to make it so difficult to do that it's not as big of a problem. Because right now in Classic and Season of Discovery, bots is a massive issue. You have thousands of bots running around doing all manner of crap, destroying entire economies as a result of just having too much shit around. So yeah, ever since they took our freedom to change talents, it's went downhill for me. Ducky, what do you mean? Don't we have the freedom to change talents? I feel like we have more freedom now to change talents than ever before. I mean, I think the new talent system is one of the best systems we've ever had. The ability to save layouts, the ability to change on the fly. But we can't experiment like in Classic. Do you mean in Season of Discovery? Or do you mean Classic needs a system similar to retail? Sorry, Ducky, I'm trying to understand the concept or the argument. Because if you mean that Classic needs a system similar to retail, I would argue that's probably not a great idea. Because I think fundamentally one of the key features of Classic is gold, right? And gold matters. And one of the reasons gold matters in World of Warcraft is because pretty much everything costs a shit ton of gold, right? Oh, Ducky, that's what you mean. Oh, okay, so you mean being able to go hybrid? Yeah, that's a whole different discussion, right? So that's not so much changing talents, more being able to... You see, the difference here is in how it was approached. Cody, how you doing, bro? How World of Warcraft philosophically used to work. So philosophically in World of Warcraft, you used to be a warlock or a mage or a warrior or a rogue or a whatever, right? You were not an affliction warlock or a demonology warlock or a destruction warlock. You were a warlock. And then as a warlock, you could specialize in whatever you felt was good for you or whatever you felt you needed. So if you felt like you needed a little bit more health, you would go into the demonology tree. If you felt like you wanted your demons to have a little bit more damage, demonology tree. If you wanted your dots to have a little bit more damage, you would go into the affliction tree and so on and so forth. Because you were a warlock, the specs were simply a way for you to customize your own character around that. In Cataclysm, really, World of Warcraft for the first time started to move away from the concept of class and towards the concept of spec. And I'm not entirely sure why Blizzard made that change, because all I can think of is Blizzard wanted more variety in the way that people play and approach the game. And they argued that having 3 distinct specs for each class allows for more variety than just giving people the ability to chop and change, and then basically people would play the exact same warlock spec for all of the expansion. Because that is generally what happened. It was a lot more interesting because different bosses would sometimes require something a little bit different, especially in Wrath of the Lich King. It was too expensive in TBC and Wrath and Classic to really approach it that way. But in Wrath of the Lich King, it became a little bit easier to make some changes to your talents if you required it for a raid night or whatever. But it was still a case of most of the time, you would choose your talents at the beginning of the patch or of the expansion, really, and then you would make minimal changes from there on going forward. This would be the best spec for you to play no matter what. And I think for Blizzard, it sort of spec focus allowed for a lot more variety. Because now you have Destruction Warlocks and Affliction Warlocks and Demonology Warlocks, and each of them are playing differently. And every patch, a different spec will be top. So it kind of makes it a lot more interesting, I guess, from Blizzard's perspective. But I do get the fundamental complaint, because personally, I wouldn't mind going back to the old style of doing things. I kind of like the way the old stuff worked. So I agree with you there. Sounds like a system where people would Google which dot placement was best and they never touch the system again. Epic Cthulhu, much like the system now. The one thing that I'll end on this, but the one thing that I wish players would accept is that no system ever will exist without acceptable meta cookie cutters. It is the nature of humans to compete. And since we wish to compete, there will be better things and there will be less good things. That means that the better thing will become the cookie cutter, the less good things will become persona non grata. Do not play this. This isn't good. I don't believe that a game should give a shit about what is or is not cookie cutter. I think a game should design itself for maximum freedom for those people that don't give a shit about cookie cutters. I think the second you start to try and design your game, knowing full well that there's going to be people cookie cutting it, you run into the problem of, well, maybe we shouldn't do anything. Maybe it's better if we just, don't do shit because there's going to be a cookie cutter anyways. It's like, no, make the system as fun as possible. Yes, there's going to be cookie cutters, but there will be players that play around with it. There will be players that don't follow the cookie cutter. So make it as fun as possible for those players. Because what does it matter? 2019 Classic was the worst in spec swapping because of the oppressive world buff meta with no Chrono Boon. Chrono Boon is probably the best thing the Classic team has ever made. I don't play a lot of Classic, Cody, but I'll take your word for it. I remember Vanilla, and dude, talent swapping, if you picked the wrong talent, that was now your talent. Like, you did not fucking go swap. It was way too expensive. So if you made the wrong choice, that's now your talent. Congratulations. You're keeping that shit until you get much, much more money. So yeah, I remember how that shit used to work. I also remember going broke, because I didn't know that changing your talent actually uses gold. This was way back, right? So we're talking, I started playing right at the end of Vanilla, and I only reached max level in TBC. And I remember I was trying out different things, and so I would constantly go to my trainer and just respec without knowing that it takes gold. And just realizing that I don't have the gold and I have no gold left was such a fucking shock to me. I remember going to my friend, I'm like, dude, what the fuck? I have no gold left. And he's like, what did you do? I'm like, I don't know. I've just been changing talents. And he's like, yeah, you shouldn't change your talents. What are you doing? You're not even max level yet. And I'm like, yeah, but I wanted to try out different talents. He's like, yeah, but that's too expensive. And then he sent me 50 gold. So I was back in the game. I didn't change more talents after that, though. American Active, how you doing, bro? So yeah, I remember those days. It was harsh, but I feel like that was part of the game. That was part of the allure of the game. Was life was hard. The game was hard, but it was also pretty fun, right? But all right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the third episode of Barrens Chat. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I tried to keep this as a mix of some prepared lore discussions and some prepared discussions, but then also just a lot of your chats, because it's Barrens Chat and pretty much everything goes here. So if you enjoyed it, please remember to hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. If you didn't enjoy it, hit the dislike button. That's also fine. A little bit of engagement never hurt anyone. Profile, I will not be going live because I actually have people coming over in about 10 minutes. I didn't know about it. They phoned this morning and they were like, hey, we'd like to come over. And I was like, all right, fine. Real life kind of important, I guess. But I'll try and go live tomorrow just for a bit before the LEC, and then we can play some Dragon's Dogma over there. Remember to join me over on Twitch if you want to join in and have some fun during the week and weekends sometimes. When I play games or we hang out, I'm willing to talk about everything. That's what makes Twitch fun. Follow me. Links are in the description down below. American Native, really appreciate that. And I'm always grateful for everyone that loves the content, everyone that's here. I really appreciate you. I will be back with another Barrens Chat next week, Friday. Same time, same place. As long as my internet holds up and my power holds up. But it should do. Let's hope. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other. Be good to each other. And I will see all of you. Oh, and have a wonderful weekend. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.